The night shift had always been quiet for David. The office tower stretched high above the city, filled with lights that never seemed to go out. To everyone else, it was a place of power, a place of money, a place of endless meetings and polished suits. But to David, it was just another building he had to clean. He pushed his mop across the shiny floors, humming softly, the sound echoing in the empty halls. He was invisible here, and that was how people liked him. David was a janitor. A single father with tired eyes and calloused hands. The executives in the tower barely noticed him when he passed. If they did, it was usually to complain that the floors were not clean enough, or that he had missed a corner of dust. No one ever asked his name. No one ever asked about his life. To them, he was part of the building, like the walls or the elevators, something to be used, something to be ignored. But tonight was different. Something in the air felt heavy, tense, like the calm before a storm. David noticed the alien executives. First, tall, thin beings with pale gray skin and glowing eyes, they walked quickly into the meeting room, speaking in hushed tones, their words sharp, their gestures quick. Most humans in the tower never understood what they said, but David understood every word. It had taken him years of secret study, late nights after putting his daughter to bed, borrowed recordings, stolen moments with old alien dictionaries he had found in a junk shop. He had learned slowly, word by word, sound by sound. No one knew, not even his daughter. It was his secret, his hidden strength, and tonight, for the first time, he heard. The language used openly, without masks, without pretending. David froze by the door, mop still in his hand. The aliens were speaking quickly now, arguing. Their voices low but clear. He bent down as if to scrub a stain on the floor. His ears sharp. His heart thudded in his chest as the words cut through him. They were not talking about money. They were not talking about trade. They were talking about humans, about how useless humans were, about how easy it would be to take everything away from them. David's hands trembled, but he kept cleaning. Acting as if he did not understand, one of the aliens laughed, a cruel, cold sound that echoed in the empty room. They do not even know what we say, the alien mocked in their tongue. They clean our floors and carry our bags, and they smile while we plan their end. The others laughed with him. The sound? Sharp like knives, David's face stayed blank, but inside, he burned. He wanted to shout, to warn someone, but he knew it was not the time. He was just a janitor. And if he spoke now, no one would believe him. He mopped closer, pretending to hum. His eyes lowered. The aliens kept talking, spilling more secrets. They spoke of secret meetings, of hidden plans, of betrayal waiting just around the corner. The more David listened, the more he realized the danger was greater than anyone guessed. His mind raced, but his body stayed calm. Years of being invisible had trained him well. He knew how to fade into the background, how to listen without being noticed. Tonight, that skill kept him alive. The meeting room door opened suddenly, too. Human executives walked in, smiling nervously, unaware of what had just been said. The aliens switched to a broken form of human speech. Their glowing eyes calm, their smiles false. David stood in the corner, mop in hand, head bowed. None of them even looked at him. The humans thought the aliens were their partners. The aliens thought David was too small to matter, and David stood between both lies, carrying the truth alone. He wanted to run home to his daughter, to hold her close and whisper the danger into her ear, but he could not. Not yet. The building was full of secrets, and tonight he had only heard the beginning. If he walked away now, the truth would vanish. With him, he stayed, his mop sliding back and forth, his heart steady but heavy. He was a janitor, yes. But he was also something more. He was a father, and fathers did not walk away when danger was near. The laughter of the aliens still echoed in his ears as the meeting began. He was invisible, yes, but not deaf. He was ignored. Yes, but not weak, and though no one in the room knew it yet. The quiet janitor in the corner held the power to change everything. The night dragged on, but David's mind did not rest. He went through the motions of his cleaning work, but inside his thoughts were racing. He replayed the alien voices again and again, the cruel laughter, the words that cut through him like blades. He knew now that his secret gift was no small thing. It was dangerous knowledge, but also powerful. And as he walked through the empty tower halls, he remembered how it all began, years ago, before the job. Before the endless nights of scrubbing floors, David had been a young man with dreams. He had loved books, old recordings, and strange stories. He had been curious about everything, especially about the aliens who had come to Earth with their ships and their endless pride. Most people around him ignored the alien languages, calling them too hard, too strange, too pointless to learn. But David had been different. He had wanted to understand. Not just the sounds, but the meaning, the heart of the words. He had believed that if he learned their speech, he might one day find his place among them. But life was not kind to him. When his wife passed away after giving birth, David was left. Alone with his baby daughter, the weight of the world crushed him, dreams slipping away like sand through his hands. He could not chase education or bright futures anymore. He needed money, food, and safety for his child. The janitor job was all he could get, and he took it with bowed head and tired hands. Every night, while the city slept, he cleaned floors so that his little girl could eat in the morning. Yet he never let go of his hidden fire when his daughter finally slept, curled up in the worn blanket they shared. David would light a small lamp and open the alien books. He whispered the strange words again and again. His tongue clumsy, his throat dry, until the sounds finally flowed smoothly. At first, he only learned scattered phrases, greetings, insults, market talk, then whole sentences. Then full conversations. Sometimes he practiced in front of an old mirror, watching his lips move the same way the aliens did. He laughed at himself, alone in the night, but he did not stop. The language became his secret companion, his quiet rebellion against the life that had pushed him into the shadows. He taught himself while washing dishes, while scrubbing stains. Even while rocking his baby girl to sleep, words became songs. Grammar became rhythm, every day. His mind sharpened, his memory stretched. No one saw it, no one cared, but he knew. He was building something inside himself, something no one could ever take away. Now, years later, that secret skill had become his shield. The night before, when he heard the aliens mock humans, he had understood every single word, the sound of their pride, their contempt, their plans to betray. It had cut deep. But it had also opened a door. For the first time, David realized the truth. His secret talent was not just knowledge. It was power. The next morning, after finishing his shift, David returned to the small apartment he shared with his daughter. The sun had already risen, spilling soft light through the cracked blinds. His daughter, Emma, ran to him, her face bright, her small hands clutching his uniform. "Daddy, did you work all night again?" she asked, her voice gentle. David smiled, brushing her hair back. "Yes, sweetheart, but I'm home now." She didn't know about the alien words. She didn't know about the secrets he carried to her. He was simply her father, the man who worked too hard but always came back, and that was enough. After breakfast, while Emma drew with her broken crayons, David sat by the window, his mind heavy. The city outside looked the same as always, but he now knew how fragile it was. He whispered alien words under his breath, testing them on his tongue. He remembered the look on the aliens' faces when they laughed about humans. He remembered their arrogance, their belief that no one understood. His fists tightened because he did understand. And soon, others would too. For years, David had been told he was nothing. A man who scrubbed toilets, who mopped up messes, who bowed his head when executives walked past. Those same executives could not speak the words he knew. They could not unravel the alien tongue. They could not hear the truth hidden behind false smiles. David could, and in that moment, he finally saw himself clearly. Not invisible, not useless, but a man with a weapon no one else held. He stood and looked at his daughter, who was laughing softly at her drawings. He thought of her future, the life she deserved. He thought of the aliens' plan, of the danger that would come if no one stopped them. He knew then that his secret would not stay secret forever. The world would know, the tower would know, the galaxy would know, and when the moment came, he would not stay silent, because he was not just a janitor. He was a father, and fathers protected what they loved that night. As he put on his uniform again and prepared for another shift, David's heart was steady. He walked back into the tower with his mop, his gloves, and his tired eyes, but behind those eyes burned a fire no one could see. He was ready. The hidden talent inside him was no longer a burden. It was his strength, and soon the world would find out what an invisible man could do. The tower buzzed with unusual activity that evening. Normally, the top floors were quiet at night, reserved only for a few late-working staff and David with his mop. But tonight, sharp voices echoed down the long glass halls, and security guards stood alert at every corner. Something important was about to happen. Something far above the reach of men like David, yet fate had quietly placed him in the middle of it. David carried his cart slowly toward the top floor, his eyes lowered, as always he had cleaned these halls for years, polishing the marble floors and shining the walls until they gleamed. He knew the patterns of the lights, the sounds of the machines, the smell of the carpet after rain. But tonight it felt different, heavier, as though the air itself was watching. When he reached the large meeting room, one of the security men waved him inside. "Keep the place spotless. They'll be here any minute," the guard muttered. Not even glancing at his face, David nodded quietly and pushed his mop into the wide room. The meeting chamber was enormous. A long oval table stretched across the center, its surface glowing faintly with embedded lights. Tall windows showed the endless city below, the towers glittering in the dark like stars. Around the walls hung banner symbols of human companies mixed with alien sigils that glowed faintly in shifting colors. It was a room built for power, a room where decisions shaped the galaxy. And in that room stood David, a janitor, with water dripping from his mop. He bent down to polish a corner of the floor. Though his ears stayed sharp, voices drifted in from the hallway, voices that made his chest tighten. The alien executives were arriving, their long robes flowing, their glowing eyes scanning everything. They walked into the chamber as if they owned it, their steps light but filled with arrogance. Behind them came human executives in fine suits, smiling nervously, eager to impress. They all took their seats. The air thick with tension, David stayed in the corner, bent low, a shadow among giants. The meeting began with formal greetings. The humans spoke first, talking about trade agreements, about shared growth, about unity between species. Their words were smooth, polite, hopeful. But when the aliens answered, their tone shifted. In broken human speech, they praised cooperation. But their eyes glowed with something darker. David's heart raced because he knew what was coming. Soon they would slip. Soon they would speak in their own tongue. And when they did, he would understand. As the humans presented their plans on glowing screens, the aliens leaned toward each other, whispering softly in their native tongue. The humans in the room smiled, unaware, nodding as though everything was going well. David's hands tightened on the mop handle because he caught every word. "They still believe we need them," one alien whispered, his voice like sand on stone. "Soon we will show them their place, beneath us as servants, as dust," another replied. David felt heat rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. Eyes lowered, he scrubbed the floor. Slowly, as if their words were nothing more than the hum of machines. One of the aliens laughed. A sound sharp and cruel. "They clean our floors, they carry our food. And they think themselves partners," he mocked. Another added, "They beg for scraps and call it trade. They are children playing at power." The human sitting across the table kept smiling, unaware of the insult that filled the room. David's stomach twisted, but he forced himself to keep moving. His invisibility was his shield, and tonight he would not break it, not yet. Minutes stretched into an hour, charts were shown, numbers were debated. But underneath the polite voices ran a dark current of alien whispers. They spoke of secret fleets, hidden weapons, plans to control not just trade, but entire governments. David's mind spun, memorizing every word, every plan. He felt the weight of it pressing on him. Heavy as chains, he was just one man, one janitor. Yet he held the truth that could change the balance of everything. Then came the moment that made the air shiver. One alien leaned back in his chair, his glowing eyes sweeping across the humans. In his own tongue, he sneered, "They are too blind, too stupid. They will never know until the knife is already in their back." The others chuckled, low and cruel. David's breath caught, because the words stabbed deep. Not only as truth, but as insult. He gripped the mop tighter, his knuckles white. A heartbeat. He wanted to stand tall, to shout at them in their own language, to strip away their false smiles. But he forced himself down, forced his body to keep moving. It was not the time, not yet. The humans clapped politely at the end of a presentation. Thinking the meeting was going well, they thanked the aliens for their partnership, for their wisdom, for their so-called friendship. The aliens nodded back. Their faces smooth, their eyes glowing with hidden laughter. David lowered his head, cleaning the same spot again and again, his ears burning with their secret cruelty. No one noticed him, no one cared. And yet, if anyone in that room had truly looked, they would have seen the fire burning in his eyes. They would have seen that the quiet janitor was no fool, no shadow. He was listening, he was learning, he was waiting. The meeting stretched deep into the night. By the time the humans began to gather their papers and shake hands, David's back ached. His hands were raw. But his mind was sharp as steel. He had seen enough, heard enough. And now the truth burned inside him like a hidden flame. The aliens thought no one had understood. No one had caught their words. But David had. The invisible man in the room had become the silent witness, and soon the world would hear his voice. The meeting had dragged on for hours, and the humans in the room were tired. They rubbed their eyes, shuffled their papers, and forced polite smiles, but the aliens sat straight, their glowing eyes sharp, their voices smooth. They looked calm. But David knew better. Their whispers had carried poison. And that poison was meant for every human in the tower. Still, no one saw it, no one understood, except for the man with the mop. David's shoulders ached, his knees stiff, but he stayed. Quiet in the corner, he had listened to every insult, every cruel word, every plan to turn humans into servants. His heart burned. But he forced himself to remain invisible. He told himself to wait, to stay silent, because one wrong move could cost him everything. But then it happened. One alien leaned forward, his pale hand resting on the table, his lips curling into a smirk. He spoke in his native tongue. His voice loud, cruel, dripping with arrogance. "These humans are fools. They sit here, smiling. While we plan their chains, they are too stupid to ever rise above us." The aliens around him laughed, the sound sharp like broken glass. The human executives across the table smiled back. Nodding, thinking it was polite laughter, they did not. No, they could not know, but David knew, and something inside him snapped. For years, he had bowed his head. For years, he had been silent, cleaning their mess, carrying his pain, hiding his gift, but not tonight. Not while they mocked humans in front of human leaders. Not while they laughed at his people, at his daughter's future. Not while they believed no one could ever answer them. The mop handle shook in his hands. His throat tightened, his breath heavy. He told himself to stop, to stay quiet. But his heart would not obey before he knew it. The words left his mouth, clear, sharp, and fluent in their alien tongue. Maybe the fools are not the humans. Maybe the fools are the ones who think no one is listening. The room froze. The aliens stopped laughing, their glowing eyes snapping. Toward him in disbelief, the humans blinked in confusion, looking from the janitor to the aliens, not understanding for a moment. Silence fell heavy across the chamber. Only the sound of water dripping from his mop broke it. David straightened slowly, his tired frame suddenly taller, stronger. He met the alien's eyes without fear, his voice steady. You mock us in your tongue. You plan betrayal. You call us weak. But you forget humans learn, humans listen. And humans fight. The words rolled out of him like thunder, sharp and flawless. Every alien in the room stared, jaws tight, their faces pale. They had never imagined a human janitor could speak their sacred language. The human executives gasped. What? What did he just say? One whispered, another leaned forward, eyes wide. Did he just speak? Alien. David ignored them, his gaze locked on the aliens he had hidden for too long. But tonight, the truth demanded to be spoken. One alien hissed, his voice trembling with rage. You dare speak our tongue. You dare expose what is not meant. For human ears, David's answer came quick, sharp, cutting like a blade. I dare, because I am human. And because my daughter deserves a world where she is not a slave to your lies. Gasps filled the room. The humans finally realized something was wrong. They saw the fear flash in the aliens' eyes, saw the tension crack their smooth masks. The executives turned to David, voices shaking. What lies? What are they saying? Tell us. David stepped forward, his mop dripping water across the polished floor. They planned to betray you, to strip away the agreements to make humans nothing but tools for their empire. Chaos erupted. The human executives shouted in disbelief, demanding answers. The aliens stammered, their smooth words breaking, their smiles gone. David spoke louder, translating every cruel whisper he had heard that night. He revealed their insults, their schemes, their hidden weapons. Every word cut deeper. Every truth shook the room harder. The aliens tried to silence him, hissing warnings, spitting threats in their language, but David did not stop. For every threat they gave, he answered in the same tongue, stronger, clearer. His voice carried across the chamber, filling it with a power no mop, no uniform, no lowly job could ever erase. The humans looked at him in awe. This man they had ignored. The janitor they had never seen had just become their shield. One of the executives whispered, almost in shame, all this time. He was here, and we never saw him. David stood firm, his chest rising, his voice steady. I was invisible, yes, but even the invisible see, even the silent hear. And tonight, I will not be silent anymore. The aliens rose from their chairs, their robes swirling, their glowing eyes furious. One slammed his hand against the table, the lights flickering, but the damage was already done. Their secrets had been dragged into the light. Their pride torn open by a janitor's voice. No matter what happened next, nothing would be the same. And for the first time in his life, David did not feel small. He did not feel invisible. He felt human and powerful. The moment of shock had come, and the world would never forget it. The silence that followed David's words felt like a storm waiting to break. The humans in the room stared wide-eyed, their pens and papers forgotten on. The glowing table, the aliens sat stiff, their glowing eyes dimming for a heartbeat. Their smooth arrogance cracked. Everyone felt the balance in the chamber shift. And no one knew which way it would fall. Then the storm came. One alien slammed his hand down on the table. The sound sharp as thunder. "You are nothing." He hissed in his native tongue, his words burning with fury. "You are dirt beneath our boots. A man who cleans floors dares to challenge us." His voice shook the walls, but David did not flinch. Instead, he met the alien's glowing eyes and answered back in the same tongue, "A man who cleans floors. Yes, but also a man who understands your lies, your hatred, your plans, and I will not stay silent." Gasps filled the chamber. The humans leaned forward, finally realizing that something far bigger than trade agreements was unfolding before them. "Tell us what he said." One human shouted, his voice sharp with fear. David turned to them, switching languages with ease. His voice strong. "They mock you. They call you weak. They plan to cut you out. To take control of everything while you smile and shake their hands." Murmurs erupted among the humans, disbelief mixed with anger. One executive rose from his seat, pointing at the aliens. "Is this true? Did you plan this?" The aliens shifted, their smooth faces breaking into scowls. One leaned forward, trying to cover the wound with calm words. "These are lies. Tricks from a janitor seeking attention," he said in broken human speech, but his voice wavered. His tone unsteady. David's reply came quick, his alien words sharp as knives. "No lies, no tricks. Only truth you never thought a human could reveal." The chamber filled with chaos. Humans demanded answers. Their voices rising, aliens hissed, trying to regain control. And through it all, David stood tall, his mop still in hand like a silent banner of defiance. For the first time, the invisible man was seen, and the powerful could not look away. Security guards rushed into the room, their weapons drawn, unsure who to aim at. One of the human executives barked orders. "Stand down. Let them speak." But the tension was thick. Every second ready to explode, David's heart pounded. But he did not stop. He translated more, exposing every cruel whisper he had heard that night. The secret fleets, the hidden weapons, the insults, the betrayal. Every word turned the human shock into fury. One alien rose from his chair, his robe swirling. He pointed a long, pale finger at David, his voice low and venomous. "You will regret this, human. You have broken a line that should never be crossed." David stepped forward, meeting him without fear. "I regret nothing. My people deserve to know. My daughter deserves to live in truth, not in chains." The human executives looked at him with new eyes. This was no longer a janitor, no longer a shadow in the corner. He was a man standing against an empire, armed only with his voice, and in that moment, they began to believe him. But the aliens were not done. They leaned toward each other, whispering quickly in their own tongue. David caught the words, threats, of silencing him, of removing him before the truth spread further. He stepped closer to the table, his voice rising. "They plan to silence me. Right here, right now, they think killing one man will bury the truth." The humans erupted again, anger boiling. "No." One shouted, "If that is true, then everything he says is true." The clash of power had shifted. No longer a secret, no longer hidden in whispers. The truth was laid bare, and both sides fought for control. The aliens hissed, their glowing eyes burning. The humans clenched their fists, realizing they had been blind for too long, and David stood between them. His voice the weapon that cut through all lies. The head of the human board finally rose, his voice trembling with fury. "We trusted you, we welcomed you, and this is how you repay us," he said to the aliens. The aliens said nothing, their silence louder than denial. David raised his chin, his tired frame glowing with quiet strength. "You thought no one listened. You thought humans were blind, but we see now, we know now. And the truth cannot be unseen." The chamber trembled with shouts, arguments, and fear, but through the storm, David stood calm. He was no longer invisible, no longer ignored. The clash of power had begun. And it was no longer between executives and aliens. It was between truth and lies, between arrogance and courage. And the janitor, who had always been overlooked, now carried the weight of the room on his shoulders. For the first time, the humans turned to him, not as a cleaner, but as a voice. "What do we do?" One asked softly, almost helpless. David looked at them, his tired eyes steady. "We stand together. We stop believing their lies, and we fight for our place." The words came simple, but they carried fire. Even the silence that followed felt like the beginning of something new. The aliens glared, their masks shattered, their power shaken. They had mocked a man with a mop, and now that man had unmasked them before everyone. The clash of power was far from over, but one truth was already clear. The balance of the galaxy had just shifted, and it began with a janitor's voice. The meeting chamber was still trembling with noise. Humans shouted, aliens hissed, security guards looked lost, their weapons raised but with no orders to follow. The truth had broken the room, and no one knew how to piece it back together. In the middle of it all stood David, still holding his mop, his chest rising and falling like a man who had carried a mountain. He felt the eyes of everyone on him, human and alien alike. He was not used to being seen, not used to carrying the weight of voices louder than his own, but he thought of his daughter, waiting at home with her crayons and her tired smile. He thought of the promise he made to himself when she was born that he would protect her. No matter the cost, that promise burned brighter than the fear pressing down on him now. An alien leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You are one man, one janitor, and you think you can stand against us," David answered in their tongue, his words sharp and calm. "I am one man, yes, but one man who refuses to kneel. And sometimes one man is enough." The human executives shifted in their seats, glancing at each other. Some still doubted, their faces pale, but others looked at David with something new in their eyes. Respect, even hope. They had built towers, traded contracts, spoken of progress, but none of it mattered if they could not face the truth. And the truth had come from the janitor they had never seen. One executive, a woman with silver hair, stood slowly. She looked at David, her voice steady. "Tell us everything. No matter how hard it is," she said. David nodded, his hands tight around the mop handle. He spoke clearly, translating every secret he had overheard fleets hidden in orbit. Treaties meant only as traps, insults spoken behind closed doors. Each word struck the humans like hammer blows. Each truth tore another layer off the aliens' masks. The aliens tried to interrupt, their voices sharp. Lies, all lies. They shouted in broken human speech, but their eyes betrayed them, glowing brighter with anger, flickering with fear. And David caught every whispered curse they threw at him in their tongue. He repeated them aloud, word for word, until the humans could not deny the truth anymore. Security guards stepped closer, uneasy. One whispered into his radio, his eyes darting between the aliens and David. David knew danger was coming. He could feel it in the air like static before lightning. The aliens would not let this stand. They would not let one man tear down their control. But David stood firm, his back straight, his voice steady. He thought of Emma, her little hands clutching his sleeve, her eyes full of trust. He could not fail her now. He raised his voice above the shouting. You think I am nothing because I clean your floors? But I have seen your lies. I have heard your hatred. And I will not let you harm my people, not my daughter, not her future. The humans fell silent. Listening, the aliens clenched their jaws, their glowing eyes narrowed. David's words filled the room like a storm. He was no longer just a janitor. He was a father, and fathers did not bow. The silver-haired executive turned to the board, her voice sharp now. We cannot allow these deals to continue. We cannot trust them after this. Others nodded, their fear turning into anger. The aliens hissed, their voices rising. You break this agreement, you will face war, they warned. David answered before anyone else could. His alien words cutting through their threat. Maybe war is already here. Maybe it began the moment you laughed at us, the moment you planned to enslave us. And maybe you should fear the human who cleans floors. Because if I can break you, what will the rest of us do? The room shook with his defiance. The humans rose from their seats, their fear turning into fire. The aliens shifted uneasily, their pride bleeding into rage. The clash of voices reached its peak. And yet through it all, David stood calm. He had carried too much for too long to break now. His strength was not in muscles or weapons, but in the fire that came from love. Love for his daughter. Love for the people who had never noticed him. Love for a humanity that deserved to rise. One alien tried a final strike, his words sharp and cruel. You think they will follow you, a cleaner? They will use you, then forget you, just like always. David's reply came without hesitation, his voice strong enough to make even the humans lean forward. Maybe they will forget me. Maybe they will never remember my name, but they will remember this night. They will remember the truth. And that is enough. Silence fell again, heavy and raw. The humans looked at him, not as a tool, not as a shadow, but as a man who had carried their future into the light. And though his body ached, though fear still pressed against his chest, David felt unbroken because he was not fighting for glory, not fighting to be remembered. He was fighting for Emma, for the chance that she would grow up in a world free from the chains these aliens planned, and no power in the galaxy could tear that strength away from him. The janitor had become something else, a father who stood against an empire. And his strength shook the room harder than any weapon. The chamber no longer felt like a meeting room. It felt like a battlefield. The air was thick with tension. The banners on the walls seemed to hang heavier. The glowing table now looked more like a war front than a place of trade. The humans stood on one side, their faces pale, but their eyes burning with new fire. The aliens sat on the other, their glowing eyes narrowed, their pride cracked, their arrogance bleeding into rage. And in the center of it all stood David, a janitor with a mop, a father with nothing but his voice. The silver-haired executive raised her hand, demanding silence. Her voice trembled, but it carried strength. This man has spoken truth, and we must choose. Do we stand blind and let them use us? Or do we rise and face what they planned? The humans looked at one another, torn, afraid. But slowly they nodded. They had been blind, but now the blindfold was gone. And it had been removed by the very man they never once thought to notice. The aliens leaned forward, their voices sharp. You break this partnership, you doom yourselves. We are stronger, wiser, older than you. David's reply came quick, sharp in their own tongue. No, you are only older, not wiser. You mock us for being young, but youth means we grow. We learn, we rise, and you cannot stop us. The humans gasped again at the sound of his fluent words. Even now, They struggled to believe a janitor could speak like this, but they could not deny the truth. The aliens' fear was real, and David's defiance was stronger than their pride. Security guards closed in around the aliens, their weapons raised, but waiting. The aliens hissed, their hands twitching, their glowing eyes flickering like stormlights. For the first time, they looked uncertain. They had thought humans were weak, silent, blind, but one man had shattered that illusion, and now every human in the room saw them for what they were. David's chest rose and fell with steady breath. He thought again of Emma, of her small smile, of her voice calling him daddy when he returned from the long nights. He thought of how she believed in him even when the world ignored him. And he knew that this moment was not for him alone. It was for her, for every human child who deserved a future free from alien chains. He lifted his chin, his voice strong. You thought I was invisible, but tonight you see me, you see us. We are not your servants, we are not your pawns. We are human, and we will stand. The words echoed across the chamber. The humans rose to their feet, one by one, their fear replaced by resolve. They stood behind him, the janitor they had ignored, the father who had revealed the truth, and in that moment, the balance of power shifted forever. One alien tried one last strike, his voice shaking with rage. You cannot fight us. One man cannot change the galaxy, David answered, calm and steady. One man cannot, but one man can wake others. One man can light a fire, and when that fire spreads, even empires burn. The humans erupted with shouts of agreement, their voices stronger now. The aliens sat silent, their arrogance finally broken. They had mocked the wrong man, underestimated the wrong father. And now the truth stood tall in front of them. Impossible. To silence, the meeting ended not with handshakes, but with walls of silence and the weight of a new future. The aliens left the chamber, their steps sharp, their glowing eyes dimmed with anger. They would not forget this night. And neither would the humans. For once, the humans did not leave bowed or begging. They left with their heads high, with truth on their side, and with the image of a janitor who had dared to speak. Later, when David walked home through the quiet city streets, the night air cooled against his face. He felt no triumph. He felt tired, his body heavy, but his heart steady. He unlocked the door to his small apartment and stepped inside. Emma ran to him, her arms wrapping tight around his legs. Daddy, you're home, she whispered, her eyes bright. David knelt, hugging her close. Breathing in the warmth of the only treasure he ever needed, he said nothing of the meeting, nothing of the storm he had faced. He simply held her, his promise unbroken. She looked up at him and smiled. You're the strongest, Daddy, she said softly, and for the first time in his life, David believed it. The galaxy would remember the night a janitor spoke in the tongue of aliens. The galaxy would remember the night truth broke pride. But for David, it was simpler. He was just a father, and he had kept his promise. He had protected his daughter's future, and in doing so, he had changed everything.